Hello, Year 8. So we're going to carry on with our non-fiction. So hopefully you'd have seen the first video about the purpose, the audience and the format of a text, and beginning to think about how you would identify and look at the writer's choices. So what has the writer done in their writing and the way they've structured it, and then how does that then meet the purpose? So if it's writing to inform or describe or persuade, how does that writer, or what kind of choices have they made in order to achieve that purpose? So the next step then, once you've identified the purpose of the audience and the format, is you then need to take it a step closer and really begin to closely analyse that text. So you might say, you might look at, well, you will look at the language of a piece and also the structure of a piece. So the structural elements, and the next step for your work for today or for this week is to make sure that you know what these things are. So I want you to write them down, I want you to research them, I want you to define them and give examples of them, okay? Because these are the key terms that we constantly refer to. There are loads more, and some of you will be able to add your own examples of things as well, please do. But these are the list of things that you should all be able to do, okay? So structural things that you might pick out. What kind of sentences are there? Are there simple sentences, compound sentences, complex sentences? Are there minor sentences, exclamatory sentences? Have a look, find out what they mean and define them. And the paragraph order. So what order is the text in? If it's a review or an article, which bit comes first? In a newspaper article, you always start with the first paragraph with the 5 W's. So the reader automatically, in a newspaper article, will know from that first paragraph exactly what the story is going to be about and exactly the news story that comes through. In a book review, the final paragraph is usually about whether you recommend it to somebody and why. And then if you're entertaining people, you might create a bit of tension at the beginning, so you won't give away all of the story, you won't give away everything at the start. And it's important to consider with paragraphs, you also might have, you might look at where the paragraph breaks and why that might be important. You might look at a particular, like a one sentence paragraph. Why is that one sentence so important that it needs a whole paragraph for itself? Look at the punctuation and again make reference to it. Why is it important? Why has the writer used that exclamation mark? What are they trying to do by making that particularly important? Why would they use pauses or emphasis in a particular way? Are there semicolons in the middle? Why do they want you to think carefully about those? What do the questions do? Rhetorical questions, they are questions which don't require an answer, and they are there to make you think. If someone asks you a question, either directly or indirectly, you automatically start thinking about the answer to that question. So do consider it. Again, it's there for a reason. It's there to kind of engage you. And then language elements, you might talk about the parts of speech. So are there particularly effective adjectives used, adverbs, verbs, nouns, etc., etc. Talk about them. If you know that that word is a verb, then tell me it's a verb. Tell me it's a verb. Use that terminology, and again, get into the habit, or back into that habit, some of you, of using that terminology because it is important. Similes and metaphors, can you spot any of them? Again, why are they there? Why has that been compared to that particular thing? Why that simile? Hyperbole, that exaggeration, alliteration, anecdotes, facts and statistics are really important, as are opinions. If I'm writing a letter or an email to my teaching colleagues, I might say, if I'm trying to say, you know, let's do it this way because it will be a much better idea, I might reference an Ofsted's opinion, or I might reference a really famous teaching kind of guru to give my argument that extra weight. If we're talking about, I don't know, there's a lot of stuff at the moment about obviously coronavirus, and there's a lot of various doctors and scientists being quoted and referenced, with the whole idea that if we are more likely to believe or listen to that particular advice if we know that it comes from a well-respected doctor or scientist or whatever. List of 3. make sure you know what they are, and make sure that you can spot them where they're used, because again, to give that extra punch, that extra emphasis to your particular piece of writing that you're looking at. And then repetition as well. Why is it there? Why has that particular word or phrase been repeated? Okay, so that's your first section of work, your first lesson, is to follow these couple of videos and make sure that you can and have defined and know what those things mean. So then we take it back to your piece of work. Okay, and you found your text, and you have read it through a couple of times, and you've purposed, audienced, and form. Okay, do you know what the purpose is? So this is like an article from like a newspaper magazine, and it's to kind of review, but it's also to entertain. The audience is aimed at adults with a sports interest, and there's a subtle undertone of politics in there as well. And it's an article. So we can see that it's an article because you can see there's kind of some headings, you can see there's some pictures, you can see you've got the clear columns, and you can see, and this is what I want you to do now, is you'll go through and you'll read it with your highlighter, your pen, or you can do it on the computer if you want to. And I want you just to pick out those language and structural features and begin to make some close analysis, because then the next step is to put your annotations into a formal paragraph. So we've done quite a lot of work around notes and bullet points and spider diagrams and tables and stuff. Now I want us to pull it back and see if we can go to paragraphs and full sentences with evidence and quotations, please. So that's where we're going this week, okay? So I might highlight it. So we're going to read it through from the top. So immediately, what has been the highlight of your lockdown? So immediately I'm going to highlight that, and right next to it, that it's a rhetorical question. Okay, so I'm going to put RQ there because that's my way that I annotate. So the rhetorical question, but it's not enough for you just to write rhetorical question, because that won't get you those high grades and those high marks. What I would then do is I'd say rhetorical question, and I'd do a little arrow, and I'd say, what does that do? It makes me think. Okay, makes me think immediately. So already from that first opening statement, that opening question, the audience and the reader are being encouraged to think and actively get engaged. Okay, and that's the purpose. We then go on to talk about Michael Air Jordan. So it's a bit of like a name drop. It's important. He's respected, he's well known, he's famous. He's been chosen for a reason. This is about The Last Dance, which is some program on Netflix. I've not seen it, but it's about Michael Jordan and his kind of height of fame and basketball success. It's set like 20 years ago. And this guy, Josh Glancy, is basically arguing that that period of time was the most successful period of time that America have had for a long, long while. And there's lots of phrases in here about gripped millions, both sides of the Atlantic. So he's saying, you know, this is so successful, this documentary, it's gripped millions. Has it gripped millions? It's both sides of the Atlantic. So again, that gripped, interesting choice of verb there. It's quite strong, it's quite aggressive, it's gripped us. We're not just interested in it, it's gripped us. He's chosen that word and that specific verb for a reason. And there's lots and lots and lots and lots of things that you can talk about. So I want you to select your own non-fiction text. It doesn't have to be an article. It can be whatever you like, anything that you've got around. There's articles in newspapers and those free papers and the pullouts and stuff. You can have a look on the internet for news articles. You might want to do a diary entry. If you've got a biography, you might want to do an autobiography. You might want to look at a piece of travel writing. Again, in newspapers and things, you've got different posters and advertising kind of leaflets and campaigns. So on this one, I might talk about immediately, you've got the NHS brand in there so that we trust it. You've got a really strong picture in the background with all the different, like the green, we know that kind of that's illness and sickness. And look at the language here. So again, we've seen this branding quite a while now. It comes from the government, so again, it's official. We have to listen to this. We have to take this seriously because it's from the government and it's from the NHS. So they are very well-known brands, obviously, and institutions. So we immediately are going to take this seriously. But look at the language. So coronavirus. There's no introduction. There's no kind of build-up or description. It's very straight to the point. Coronavirus. We know what that is at the moment. Got symptoms, even mild ones. Again, it's quite informal. Got symptoms. That's not a full part of the sentence. Even mild ones. So that there, again, is a rhetorical question. Even mild ones. Do we have symptoms? Are they mild? That rhetorical question makes you think from the beginning. Do not leave the house at all for 7 days. Simple sentence. Fact. Do not leave the house. It's imperative. Do not leave the house. And to emphasise that even more, it's in capital letters. Still have symptoms after 7 days. So again, we go back to that rhetorical question again. Still have symptoms? Do not leave the house until they go. And again, that font, that capital, those capital letters, important. Emphasis. Imperatives. Everyone in your household must not leave the house for 14 days. So it's very, very clear. Okay, very, very clear. And obviously that's the message that the government are putting out. It's very, very clear. There's no room for negotiation because this is such an important thing. But it's looking at the language that they've used. And what I want to get you understanding is that every writer, whether it's a biography, whether it's slightly more informal, whether it's a book review, whatever it is, or a very, very important thing from the government, such as these kinds of messages that we're seeing a lot, they've all used their language incredibly carefully. They've chosen that really, really carefully. They could have written a whole page spread about it all here. They could have told us more information about coronavirus. They could have told us about symptoms. They could have listed all of the different symptoms, but they haven't. In this newspaper page, they've kept it very, very clear and very, very simple. And that is for a reason, so that we, because of these imperatives here, because of those capital letters and those questions and those specific pieces of information, we listen to it and we respond to it. So that's what I want you guys to do, is have a go at looking at it for yourself. I've just done two kind of quickly there. It's up to you what you choose, I don't mind. If you want to do two, that would be brilliant, two different ones. What's the purpose, what's the audience, what's the format? These two are very, very different. Very, very different in their style. So it would be interesting if you could do to compare the two of them would be great and think about the differences. But I'm looking for your devices. I'm looking for you to independently annotate it and hopefully begin to then take these notes and turn them into formally structured sentences and paragraphs. Okay, have a great week. See you later.